sentence. Good things come
to those who wait.
in small packages. That's right. And I think that saying certainly applies to the scriptures that we've read and that we've listened to this morning. Our Old Testament reading comes from a book of the Bible that you'll even hear differences on how to pronounce it, Habakkuk or Habakkuk. And if we were to do a Bible drill of ready, set, go, find that book in the Bible, if it weren't for a thumb index, we'd probably have some time, because it's a very short book in the Old Testament. It only has 3 chapters to it, very, very small. And yet, in this book is one of the most powerful, packed messages that you can possibly imagine. And it was in our reading today. Before I tell you what that passage is, I'll just kind of give you just a little bit of what that book is about. It is very simply that someone is seeing the world exactly as it should not be, and is saying to God, when are you going to do something about this? It's a mess. And God answers and says, I'm glad you asked, because I am going to do something about it, and it's going to even be a bigger mess through what I do. Sometimes you got to make something worse in order to make it better. Have you ever, like you remodel a kitchen, and it usually starts with a deconstruction before you get to the rebuilding. And God then delivers of this impending judgment and all that's going to come. And the person is probably, Habakkuk is probably at this point saying, I'm really sorry I asked. And yet he ends on this powerful portion in chapter 3, where he basically says, I'm going to trust God in all circumstances. It is a powerful declaration of faith. And so I encourage you, read the book of Habakkuk this week. Spend the first half of the week trying to find it, the second half of the week reading it, and to meditate on that. But the powerful passage that comes out of today's reading is this: the just shall live by faith. The just shall live by faith. That little scripture from the book of Habakkuk is so powerful that the book of Romans, the book of Galatians, and the book of Hebrews quote that very verse. And the book of Romans delivers the powerful message of who is justified in the eyes of God. And we find that we are justified in the eyes of God how? Through Jesus Christ, his Son, not through our good works, but through the good works of the sacrifice, the death, and the resurrection of Jesus Christ, who lives forever to make intercession for us. That's the just. Galatians talks about the how shall we live. Galatians was all of these people who said, if you want to have God's favor, you need to follow all 600 rules, laws of the Old Testament. And the Apostle Paul was, are you crazy? And he talks about the freedom and the liberty and how Jesus has set us free. If anything, the law was our tutor to introduce us to Jesus. And so we find that in God's Spirit, that we have a freedom in Jesus. And out of that freedom, we bear that fruit of the Spirit of love and peace and joy and righteousness and long-suffering. The just shall live by faith. And when we come to the book of Hebrews, Hebrews is all about the faith aspect. Hebrews chapter 11, by faith, by faith, by faith. And we see example after example of people who lived by faith and whose faith guided their actions. It wasn't a passive belief. It was a belief that was so deeply entrenched in them that it couldn't help to come out of them in their actions.
Amen and hallelujah.
That's right. If you have a faith that doesn't show, then you probably should question the validity of your faith. It's this simple. If you plant an apple seed, you're going to get an apple. And if you're not getting apples, then you planted a different seed. If we are not experiencing the fruit of God's Spirit in our life, then do we have the Spirit in our life? The just shall live by faith. And we see this come together beautifully in our story of Zacchaeus. I'm going to call him Zacchaeus. I remember I learned that song. I even learned the hand motion, which I will not do for you in front of everyone. And it's a powerful story of transformation. It is a powerful story of Jesus reaching across what all social structures to show his grace and his love and his mercy. Why do I say that? Well, we start out that we know a few things about Zacchaeus. One is it says that he was a tax collector. We talked about tax collectors a week or two ago, about how they were the ilk of society. Tax collectors often made themselves very rich because if Rome said, Megan, that your tax is $100, I as a tax collector would say, Megan, your tax is $400. And there wasn't a thing you could do about it but pay it. And so tax collectors took advantage of that situation to their own financial gain. They were also despised not only because of the way that they took advantage, but they were agents of Rome. They were considered to be sellouts to the conquerors and people who had betrayed their own people. And so we know this of Zacchaeus. The second thing that we think we know is it says that he was of short stature. Now, the Greek in that text says it really doesn't definitively say if it was Zacchaeus who was short or Jesus who was short. I'd never heard that before, but I'll have to take the Greek scholars at their word on that. We kind of credit Zacchaeus with being short, that he couldn't see. But it's a remarkable thing that Zacchaeus went out in public in the first place, because if you're not very well liked, it's a scary thing to walk into a group of people who don't like you. And it's an especially scary thing if it's a mob of people. Anybody remember the name of the disciple who followed Jesus? Simon the Zealot? The Zealots were a group of people who would think twice of killing a tax collector. They're out there. You know, sometimes we say there's crazy people out there. Well, for Zacchaeus, there were zealots out there. people who would just as soon take his life as opposed to any other course of action. So for him to go in public was to risk physical harm to his being. At the very least, I'm sure there were accidental bumps, accidental stepping on. People didn't treat him well. And it is this person whose faith overcame his fear, and he decided, I need to see this Jesus. And he didn't let his fear keep him. And he acted on this faith, and he ran ahead and he climbed into a tree, and how wonderful to know that God knew his name. Amen. And brothers and sisters, beloved of God, Jesus knows your name. Today in the service, when we remember those who have gone on before, we will read their name and we will remember. Beloved of God, know that you are named, that you are remembered, that you are loved by our Savior. And it isn't just that, it is you are invited. Zacchaeus is invited to come down and to have Jesus come to his place. And for Jesus to go to the house of a tax collector was unheard of. No self-respecting Pharisee or teacher of the law would go to that place. And yet we see Jesus going, and that calls us to question, where is it that we should be willing to go where others will not go? In the name of Jesus. And as a result of his faith and as a result of his obedience, we see the transformation that takes place in the life of Zacchaeus. He offers to make things right. And there is no doubt that salvation has come to this house. Zacchaeus didn't just say, from now on, I'm going to say Jesus is a good person. He said, from now on, I'm going to live the way that God would have me live. And his commitment to restore wholeness to anyone that he may have wronged, that this was well beyond what the law would require of anyone to do. Zacchaeus was touched by the grace of God. Jesus, I think with a big smile, says that salvation has come to this person, a child of Abraham, which is a slam again to those who had said that this person is outside of the kingdom of God. And then says that the Son of Man came to seek and to save that which is lost. And I really liked what one commentary had to say. He said, I don't take the lost to mean the damned. He said, I take the lost to mean those who are not in the right place. When you lose keys, that means they're not in the right place. When you're looking for something and can't find it, it's because it's not where it's supposed to be. I'll never forget. Not long ago, some of you may know Bill Wheeler. Bill Wheeler's garage is legendary because everything under the sun is jammed into this garage. And we were in this garage and we were doing a little project and we needed some wood screws in order to finish it. And he said, let me get some. And he went in the house to get it. Like, what are you doing? He said, I knew exactly where they were in the house. And he's like, I'm sure they're in the garage, but I don't know where. Well, the Son of Man came to seek and to say that which is lost, that which is not in the right place. Our right place is at the table with Jesus. Which is so cool, because the way the text just plays out, we're able to share the Lord's table today. And so, let us, as we celebrate the life and the death and the resurrection of Jesus, the power of life and life eternal, let us be bold in our faith and know that the just shall live by faith. Let us never underestimate the power of the Word of God and God's Spirit when it takes root in our lives. For it will bring about transformation, not only for our good, but for the blessing of those around us. Look at what happened to Zacchaeus. People obviously were blessed because of what God did in his life. Never underestimate what God can and will do through you, and can and will do through me. What he can and will